The loop can look something like trigger, then I act out, then I go through the guilt and shame, then I go into withdrawal and isolation, and then I repeat. Because, as we've identified here in the work, so often going to porn is not just about sex, it's about trying to meet another need, such as a very common one, connection.
What's up, Baldy?
All right. All right. Hey, look who's talking. Look who's talking.
We have the same barber, apparently.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Well, I must pay mine a little bit more. All right, all right. Welcome, brothers. Welcome to today's episode of the Porn to Purpose podcast. We are your hosts, Coach
How you
Matt,
doing?
Coach
How you doing?
Yeadon. Welcome, welcome, Yeadon. Good to have you here today, brother, with us.
Always love talking about my favorite topic.
Oh man, oh man. We're back at it
Although
again
it's my
today,
favorite
brother.
topic for different reasons these
Yes,
days.
yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And today we're going to be touching on another one of those sharp, juicy ones. The conversation of shame, so inherent to this conversation. My sponsor in my 12-step recovery program that I work around sex, he says, I feel like I came out of the womb with a certain amount of shame. And I said, yeah, I can relate to that, man, especially growing up in the church. Shame was just infused to so much
Oh my gosh.
of my story, especially around sexuality.
110%.
You can relate to that. Yes, sir.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Shame is an old friend that I hate.
Yes. Almost feels like and there have been times when I felt like, man, like it almost feels like I am the shame.
Yeah.
It feels like it's almost like I almost felt as though I've embodied the shame, and that's kind
Like
of
it's part of my identity.
exactly.
Like this
That's
is
what
who I am.
it's who I am. Like I am shame. Yeah, man. And it's almost like in my body and a part of who I am, part of my identity. And that leads us into our conversation here today
How
of,
can we disrupt the shame?
yes, the shame loop. The
Yep.
shame loop. I was introduced early on in my recovery work to the conversation of the shame loop. And the shame loop, maybe you can relate to this, guys, goes something like, it's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg? I always say, which came first, the shame or the porn, right? Did I already have shame and I was kind of like using the porn to deal with the shame? Or maybe I already had, maybe the behavior of pornography or sexual whatever deviancy led to the shame. But whatever the case, it seems to be a loop. And the loop can look something like trigger, then I act out, then I go through the guilt and shame, right? Then I go into withdrawal and isolation, right? And then I repeat because, as we've identified here in the work, so often going to porn is not just about sex, it's about trying to meet another need, such as a very common one, connection, right? So it's like I act out, I use porn, it drives me into isolation. Then I'm just trying to find that connection again, and it just drives me right back into the same old pattern, which is where we get this idea of the shame loop. Or maybe I'm feeling so low and so depressed, I just need something, some way to feel better. So I'm just reaching for that very familiar low hanging fruit, right? So it's not just about you being weak, brothers. It's about being stuck in this loop. We want to bring awareness to it and dig into it, kind of give you a really simple, repeatable 3-step process that you can use to disrupt the shame
Yeah.
loop pattern in your life. Right?
Yes, indeed. Let's break down this loop in a
Yep.
little more granular, right?
Yep. Yep.
So it's the steps we have for what we're talking about today is it's like it's a 5-step loop and then it repeats over and over again. So first step in this process is there's some kind of event. There's a catalyst, a trigger, or a stressor. You get bad news at work. You get in a fight with your wife. You feel under attack because she's asking you questions like she does. Your kids scream at you because they don't want to pick up their room. And they say, why do I have to pick up my room? Right? I mean, I'm not talking about my life or anything. I'm just generalities out here. But you know what I'm talking about, right? The guy cuts you off in traffic or roars through your neighborhood at 80 miles an hour in a 25 zone, right? Something happens
Mm-hmm.
that's a trigger event. It catalyzes it, the emotions start to rage, the story in our head starts to spin out of control,
Yep.
and it's unpleasant.
Yep.
It's unpleasant. We identify these as negative thoughts and negative emotions.
Yep.
I would argue that emotions aren't positive or negative; they just are.
Yep.
But they're definitely unpleasant.
Yep.
When we hit those emotions, right? A lot of unpleasantness, a lot of uncomfortableness, a lot of pain, a lot of chaos bouncing around. We're like, huh, that part of ourselves, that inner addict, is like, we cannot cope with life this way, right? We're
Yep.
not going to survive life.
Yep.
We have to do something to cope with this emotional chaos, with
Yep.
this turmoil, with this unpleasantness that we're experiencing. And where do we go? Pull out the phone, get on the
Yep.
laptop, get on the
Yep.
whatever it is.
Yep.
We go to the porn. It's the pill that we take to manage those emotions and manage
Yep.
those thoughts. It shuts them down. We get the dopamine hit, and it's like, okay, I can breathe. That's step two, right? So first, step one, we have the trigger event. Step two, we act out, we use porn. Step three, man, this is one of the kickers. The guilt rushes in. Maybe it's because we were raised, porn is evil, porn is a sin, porn is immoral, porn is toxic, whatever we were taught. Porn is, you're a deviant if you use porn, you're a pervert. Whatever programming we've had, guilt shows up after we use the porn. I messed up. And then from there, it's a very short distance to the fourth step in the cycle, the shame. Where it's like, I didn't just make a mistake. I didn't just mess up. I am messed
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
I am a mistake. I can't tell you how many times I would go to sleep as a teenager and in college with these waves of shame. Because again, I had used porn to shove all my emotions to the side, shove all the pain out of my brain for a moment so I could function. And then very shortly thereafter, it all comes washing back in, and I'm just stuck in my shame, stuck in my guilt. And of course, because porn is such a taboo subject, it's such a sensitive topic, I didn't have anybody to talk to. The last step in the cycle is isolation. It's like, oh man, I can't tell my dad about this. He's going to think I'm a sexual pervert, deviant monster.
Right.
I can't come clean. I can't be transparent with my Thursday morning men's group or my Wednesday night Bible study. They're going to think I'm like Satan incarnate if I share what's really going on in my life. So we stay isolated. We try and white knuckle it for as long as we can. But willpower is a finite resource, and it only lasts for so long until then again, trigger event happens because we've been trying to just manage all of this pain and anguish, and now we have more guilt and more shame, right? Little more pain, little more guilt, little more shame gets added at every cycle. We try and last as long as we can without acting out, without using porn, but then invariably another catalyst event happens. Another tough day at work.
Yep.
A client fires you,
Yep.
right? Your boss yells at you. Your kids don't respond to text messages. Your kids don't answer your phone calls. And your son hadn't taken out the trash. Like you told him last night, hey, reminder, trash day tomorrow, get the trash bins out. And it all comes crashing back in, and the cycle continues.
Yep.
And with every cycle, there's just another tablespoon of pain that's added from the
Yep.
guilt and the shame, and we stay isolated, and we get stuck, and we go deeper and deeper into the abyss and into the
Yep.
blackness. The shame keeps us trapped. Porn isn't the only thing trying to steal your freedom. Shame is the prison you stay in after the fall.
Yep.
Shame keeps us trapped.
That's it, man.
Matt, anything else to add on that?
No, I think it's just a really great distinction that you made there. Like guilt says I did something wrong.
Yeah.
Shame says I am something wrong. Such a critical distinction. And so that kind of leads us into our next section there. Yeadon, that's where we begin to take a look at how can we break this cycle? How can we break this pattern? So Yeadon and I, we'd love to give you a simple kind of 3-step process or a 3-piece formula, if you will, right? To kind of how to begin to interrupt this pattern, right? Because if we're in a loop, sometimes it's hard to interrupt the cycle or the momentum we may be finding ourselves in, right?
Right.
So step 1, guys, we have this beautiful idea we work with here inside the community that says shame dies when stories are told in safe places. We place shame dies when stories are told in safe places. I want to let that land. I don't want to just say it and move on too fast. I want to let that land. Like that's so critical, right? And that's what we work to create here inside the Porn to Purpose community, right? That's what we're creating here with this conversation we're having today. That's what we are creating inside the Porn to Purpose Facebook group. That's what we're creating inside the Liberation Bootcamp and the Journey community, right? is a safe place to begin to have these conversations. And that's why whenever we have the conversation about, all right, I've got a problem with porn, what's something I can begin to do to shift this? One of the first things we always offer is like get into community. Because you get into community,
100%.
right? You can begin to normalize the conversation. You begin to diffuse the shame that you've been carrying around with. You can begin to get around other men who are on this path. Such a critical piece. So the first step, guys, is when you're in this loop, and we practice it in our community, right? Is to speak it immediately. The shame thrives in silence, right? So the moment we begin to find ourselves in that, carrying that shame, right? We speak it, we name it. We tell a brother about it. And if we don't have that availability, we could journal about it. We can just begin to bring it into the light. Begin to bring it into the light versus just hiding. And the moment you begin to share the shame, it begins to lose oxygen. Whereas we say it dies when shame is stories, stories are told in safe places, right? So that's number 1 is to speak it, bring it into the light because it festers in the darkness. Number 2 is we reframe it. Yeadon offered a beautiful distinction in his first section there. It's like the distinction between guilt says I did something wrong. That's fair. Shame says I am something wrong, right? So we get to challenge this story or reframe the story of like, I'm not inherently flawed. I'm not inherently broken, which is what shame would lead us to believe, right? So we use empowering language and we can begin to look at things like, okay, so I'm not inherently flawed. I made a choice that doesn't serve me, but it doesn't necessarily indicate who I am, right? We can begin to look at sizing it up and reframing it and say, okay, I made a choice. I went off track. I can use this and take this as feedback, right? Not just complete failure, right? And I can focus on progress over perfection, right? And we can look at it's like, this is not who I am. This is a slip that I made, right? Went off track. And here's what I'm going to do next to course correct.
Yeah.
And that leads me to number 3, and that's where we can begin to make a new choice, right? To interrupt the pattern. And for me, I know, and we offer ideas such as the relapse recovery document, right? And one of the ideas that we can that one of the ways in which that begins to help is it's like, okay, I made this choice. I'm finding myself here, but I can extract the wisdom. I can download the data, right? And I can mine the gold from the situation and I can apply it moving forward. And I can apply it to my journey. So I don't have to continue to repeat the same things over and over again. So for me, I find a really powerful way to interrupt that shame loop is to say, I'm going to do something different this time. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I made a choice that doesn't serve me, but I'm at least going to be intentional about not continuing to repeat the same pattern over and over again. And I find that
Yes.
really helps to begin to clean up, right? Or interrupt that shame loop. We've got, so you can implement a new tool, strategy, or habit, right? You can go to the relapse recovery document, take a look at what happened, right? Mine it for the gold and apply it to your lesson. You can employ a new tool, such as we teach in the Liberation Bootcamp, the 4-rack formula. All right, how do I take a look at this and how do I approach these urges and impulses from a more strategic place? Or number three, maybe we could take a bigger, bolder action and we could enroll into a community, join a community, join a program like the Liberation Bootcamp, right? So it's like you're not just, you know, continuing to repeat the same patterns, like the same spiral. You're building a new pathway towards freedom in your life, right?
When we try, I know when in the past, before I joined the Liberation Bootcamp, before I found Porn to Purpose, my attempts at quitting porn, they were like trying to climb a ladder with two rungs over a 20-foot wall. One rung at the bottom and one rung at the top.
Yep.
And I was just trying to jump as high as I could to try and grab onto that top rung so I could
Yep.
make it over the wall.
Yep.
And yeah, every now and then I could jump, 18 feet. Like I'd have 18 days of sobriety. But I still had that cycle going. I was in isolation. I still identified myself as the problem instead of I was making mistakes. Instead of thinking I was making mistakes, I was the mistake. And I was just an evil, morally bankrupt, terrible human being
Right.
that couldn't stop this immoral, sinful, corrupt behavior, whatever the
Yep.
story was in my head.
Yep.
And I found that one, by having the safe community, it's safe for me to identify what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, or if I relapse, if I reset, if I lose my sober streak. And the men in the community can offer insights like, you know what, this is how I have found works for me in those situations to handle them. Not Nate, this is what you need to do conversation, but what if you tried this instead?
Yep.
Instead of okay, you took your porn pill, you took your pain pill that was porn for the pain this week. Well, but let's dive deeper and really figure out what was going on, what was
Yep.
causing the pain.
Yep.
What's a healthy way that you can meet that need? What's a healthy medicine that you can take for the pain next time?
Yep.
And then little by little, I started building these rungs in my ladder. It's easy to climb a ladder one rung that has 20 rungs on it.
Yep.
It's impossible to climb a 20-foot ladder with two rungs. You're just not going to make it.
Yep.
And by getting out of the shame spiral, I was able to start putting more rungs on the ladder to make that climb, to get to the other side of the addiction, to live in freedom. If you reset your track, you lose variety, your framework has failed. So let's dig into what your framework is and figure out your defense. Oh, my weak spot is I was off of my sleep routine for the past week. It's like, I wouldn't have thought sleep would affect my addiction, my porn use, but I guess it does. So I'm going to focus not on trying to avoid porn. I'm going to focus on I need to get enough sleep. If I'm only getting 5 hours of sleep a night, my defenses are down. It's like,
Yeah.
making these connections where there's nothing shameful about making a mistake.
Yeah.
It's like, that was a mistake. Let's course correct, shore up those defenses, and climb the next rung.
Yeah. Good stuff, brother.
Yeah. You cannot shame your way into freedom.
Yep.
You can't do it. If you could, I would have. If shame worked, I would be free from porn. I would have been free from porn at age 12.
Yep. Yep.
But it doesn't.
Yep. So, brothers, we offered you a simple, 3-step kind of process today to interrupt this shame loop. It's to speak it, to name it, to bring it into the light, to reframe it. Number 3, to make a new choice, to interrupt the pattern, right, with a new habit, with a new tool, with a new strategy. And a strategy that we work with here and offer here inside the Porn to Purpose podcast is the Liberation Bootcamp program Yeadon went through several years ago, right? A program many men have gone through to begin to adopt these new tools, to get into community, to learn how to reframe this, to develop the emotional intelligence and the emotional awareness. So we'd love to make an offer, an invitation for you today, brothers, to consider joining us in the Liberation Bootcamp. Want to invite you to head on over to porntopurpose.com. You can learn all about Yeadon, myself, the Porn to Purpose community, Liberation Bootcamp. See if it feels like it might be a fit for you. Determine if it's the level of support that you might be wanting or needing in your life, and you can book a call to speak with Yeadon or myself. We'd love to talk with you about it, learn more about you and where you are in your journey and what we can do to support you in that.
You're not alone, brother. There is freedom on the other side of this. And we're rooting for you.
Yep.
In the meantime, thank you for listening.
Yep.
Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It really does help spread the message of hope and freedom to other men. And we'll catch you next time.
Yep.
When we're back behind the microphone, behind the video camera.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brothers. Thanks for being here today. Love and appreciate you wherever you are in the world. Peace and power.
Noble men.
Noble men. Bye-bye.